Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Uninterrupted. I'm your host Chris Hammonds, and with me today is Jon Fausz. Jon, say hello.
Hey everybody.
All right guys, as always, we're going to get right into it. So, every business owner has a risk appetite. You know, you'll see some business owners buy cheap locks for their building, while other ones are souping it up. You got security cameras, alarms, and all of these things. And neither choice is right or wrong until something happens, right? And cybersecurity kind of works the exact same way. So, Jon, could you tell everybody, what is risk appetite in plain English?
Yeah, so we deal with risk appetite a lot. We talk about it in cybersecurity because it's kind of what guides a lot of cybersecurity decisions for a company. And it's really from a broadly speaking perspective is how much risk are you as a business willing to kind of accept in your operations as you go through things, whether that can be from moving into an industry or the types of data risk that you have. It's from a very high level perspective of kind of what is the general kind of risk that a company is willing to put on their shoulders in order to actually operate and do business. When I look at it from Forbes, we have a lot of risk that we deal with. So we have our business inherently is risky. We deal with the hackers target us. We deal with customer data. We deal with all these sorts of things. It's a risky business to be involved in general. So we know that we have to deal with risk. We know to do those sorts of things. So our risk appetite from a broad perspective is we're in a risky business, but we're not really willing to tolerate risk at an individual perspective on a granular perspective. So when you look at risk tolerance, things like that, that's what can people have access to? How much risk does an individual device carry? How much risk does an individual email account carry? How much risk does a piece of downtime carry in our organization? How much risk are we willing to put into those sorts of things? So risk appetite is kind of your broad acceptance of risk as an organization as a whole. Risk tolerance is really the kind of granular things that go along from there.
Gotcha. And you know, a cyber incident is obviously a risk that everyone from your end users, your frontline workers, all the way up through your owner and CEO need to be aware of. So is every business required to have kind of the same level of cybersecurity to mitigate that risk?
No, I mean, it really depends on a whole bunch of factors of what your business actually does and deals with based on how much risk you carry. So if you're a CPA firm or something like that, or a law firm or something, your data might carry more risk just because you have more sensitive data, more sensitive type of information than, say, a landscaping company or a retail firm or something like that, because you're not carrying the same amount of data. The actual risk within those sorts of things are different. It also is tied up with how your operations run. Are you really super reliant on computers or are you not? I mean, the people that do my electric for my house, they barely use computers at all. Right? Their risk of that kind of organization, their pencil and paper for a large amount of stuff, their risk, you know, is completely different for somebody whose operations is completely tied up with computers. Now, do I wish that they used more technology? They're good electricians, but you know, there's some efficiencies that they're definitely leaving on the table by doing things that way. But that's what their company has decided that they want to do. They don't want to take the risk of using technology and integrating it more in their business, but they're actually doing a risk of the other way of being left behind from their competition. You know,
I've spoken to some companies who believe, you know, cybersecurity really isn't a risk. They seem to think that they are just locked down, 100% secure. But is that? And we've talked about this before. That's not really realistic.
Right. So I audit a lot of places. We've said this before. We'll be super generous here. We'll say less than 10% of them are actually secure at a level that would really make it so that they would mitigate the risk of a cyber attack in 2026. And I'm being super generous with here. I mean, it's really like 1 to 2% of the places that we've ever audited have been doing enough for cybersecurity that are outside of the organizations that we manage. When you talk about, you know, the risk appetite for a ransomware event, I would say that everybody's risk appetite for a ransomware event, if they were being honest, would be zero. They don't want to go through one. And if you actually knew that, you wouldn't do it. But the behaviors that they're doing, the behaviors that they're showing, their cybersecurity investment, those sorts of things is not showing that they have that appetite for that risk. They are carrying much more risk for that than they tell us that they are. And I think it has a factor of them just not fully understanding how easily it could happen, and also not fully understanding that it's really not that bad to prevent as long as you're doing the right things.
100%. And so who should determine an organization or a company's risk appetite?
It's the business leadership.
Business leadership.
Right. So your IT and your cybersecurity and all the other departments can help inform that. They can help the business owner make a decision based on that. But at the end of the day, it's the upper level business leadership that defines what the acceptance is for that organization.
So give me a couple examples of just some factors that would determine a company's risk appetite.
Yeah. So if you're a high compliance company, then you should be able to stomach less risk than other places. Like you have some CMMC type of data that you have to protect due to the federal government, due to having Defense Department contracts. You have sensitive data due to a law firm or CPA firm, anything like that. You should be less accepting of risk overall in your organization. You should be less accepting of that granular risk, knowing that you're in a high risk organization to begin with. Your appetite to jump, to leap without looking, and to just dive into things that head first without having any care in the world about what could potentially happen. That should be lower for you. If you're an organization that really, really deeply relies on this technology, then you should be making decisions that are saying, hey, how do I make sure that this technology doesn't go down? How do I mitigate situations? How do I work in a way that says, okay, well, if this goes down, how do I continue facilitating my business functions? How do I continue fulfilling the goods and services that I'm supposed to be doing? And looking at it from that aspect. So it really just depends in taking an honest look at your organization to say, what am I actually holding? What are the operational risks to the organization if I do go through some kind of technology event or something like that? What can cause me to stop making money or processing money or delivering my goods and services? And then that should inform, how willing you are to do that. A lot of times we look at that, and the easiest way to get people to wrap their heads around it is take a critical system and say, how long can this be down for before it materially impacts your organization? And so sometimes that's minutes, sometimes it's days. It just depends on each different piece of the things. And then that's how you help develop, from a technology perspective, how much risk you're willing to stomach for your organization.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that help you determine your risk appetite. And you touched on a lot of them. The industry obviously is a big one. The revenue that you're bringing in, your reputation at stake. Does your business rely on your reputation? All these other factors help you determine your risk appetite. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. And you also mentioned one other thing I found interesting too. So with a law, let's say I got a law firm and a landscaping company, right?
Right.
Why is their risk appetite different? And just plain English.
Yeah, so I mean, the data sensitivity at minimum that they're dealing with is completely different. So it really just depends on what you're dealing with, what kind of types of things you have access to, what your customers are expecting, what are the hackers looking at going after. Generally, if you're a landscaping company and you are using technology, the hackers will be looking to hack you for an operational downtime thing or get in the middle of a financial transaction. Data sensitivity is probably less of a concern for you for the three heights of the three pillars that we talk about all the time. Data sensitivity, or somebody stealing your sensitive data and charging you a blackmail for that, that's less likely of a concern than it is versus a law firm or CPA firm or something like that has a huge data pillar because, there's a lot of sensitive data here. Now, you could be say you're you're a landscaping firm that deals with really high-end places. Do you have access to Joe Burrow's home, where you have access to get into his garage and get his stuff, or a key code to get into his gated community or whatever, right? You might have a different data sensitivity risk than say,
that's a good point.
Hey, a landscaping firm that just does small residential or things like that. So there really is a different sandwich. There is a different recipe cocktail that we talk about all the time for each of your companies, even if you're in one of these industries. It's not necessarily wholesale. Or you could be a firm that has a Defense Department contract where you do the landscaping for, say, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base up in Dayton. You probably have to be under CMMC level 1 compliance for that because you have contractual information. So, yeah.
Okay. So we've taken a look at it from different industries. But what about if two businesses are in the same industry? Can they still have a different risk appetite?
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about there, right? So, yeah, just to reiterate, if you depending on what type of law you do, two law firms could have different kind of risk. It really depends on what type of data you have, the different heights of those pillars, the different operational risks for how ingrained are you in technology, how long can you suffer technological downtime, and we're not just talking from a cybersecurity perspective, just the regular Murphy's Law of a server going down when you need it the most. I talk to people all the time about this, is don't think about this system going down when it's nice and convenient for you. Think about this system going down when you need it to be functioning.
Worst time.
You have that case that's going out the door and it needs to be done, in the next hour or so, and you're putting the finishing touches on it. Now your system goes down. Is the judge going to offer you an extension of that case? Hey, you need to do this sorts of thing if you're a landscaping firm and you need to go and cut these people's property before they have this big event coming up, and the thing that reminds you to do that has gone offline and you missed that event deadline. What is that going to do for you? So it really just depends on how ingrained in technology, how ingrained you are with data, and you need to be looking at it from that lens of, if this system goes offline, how long could it be down for before it materially impacted me? And then what do I do to mitigate that risk and make it so that it has higher uptime and my recovery points are better, or my recovery time is faster, and all those sorts of things. That takes money to do that. Higher uptime takes more money, sometimes significantly more money, and that also becomes into the risk equation that you put together. Is it more risky for my business to invest in downtime mitigation than it is to just suffer the downtime?
Gotcha. Okay, so let me ask you this. So if your business is on the internet, you're holding a cybersecurity risk for sure. But how can you justify spending money on cybersecurity if you've never gone through an incident before?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think this is the big thing that a lot of people struggle with, is they don't realize how actually prevalent this is, the hacking really is. They are carrying a false sense of security in that it hasn't happened to me, then it won't happen. And in my estimation, it just hasn't happened yet. I think this is going to be one of those big things where everybody that you end up knowing is going to go through some kind of cyber event, whether personally or through their business. I think most people probably have, and it's been swept under the rug for a lot of things. But it's underestimating the likelihood that this is going to happen. So really, it's about being prepared. And there's two different levels of being prepared. Probably on a long enough time scale, the preppers will be right. Some event is going to happen in your area to where the people that have been saving food for 30 years are going to be
bunkers in their backyard.
Yeah, right. They're going to be found right on a long enough time frame. But the odds of that happening within their lifetime or somebody is, questionable at best.
Right.
But on a cybersecurity scale, we're seeing incidents creep up massively. They're hitting more and more organizations. More companies are going through business email compromise. More people are doing these sorts of things. And it really comes down to the factor of, if you're prepared for it before it happens, it impacts you a lot less. And I like to think of it as this. You can be a really good driver. You can follow the road rules. You can, you're not using your cell phone while you're driving. You can do all these sorts of things. And a drunk driver can still plow into you while you're parked at a red light, and there's nothing that you can do to prevent that. Well, at that point, what are all the other things that are around your life that made you prepared for that? Are you driving a good car that has a good safety rating? Are you wearing your seatbelt?
Yes.
Are you having good insurance just in case they don't? All these sorts of things to make it so that your life is going to be impacted as little as possible from that. Do you have good health insurance to cover if you've gone through some kind of physical issue with that sort of thing? All those things that have happened outside of this singular event impact how much this event affects your life. And that's the same thing with cybersecurity, is the more preparatory work that you do, the more easy it is to float through one of these events when they happen and not have it really affect your life badly.
Gotcha. And from a technical aspect, let me ask you, what are some risks that you see business owners unknowingly accept every single day? We see a lot. When we're doing our audits.
So I see admin passwords being written down all over the place, open Wi-Fi's, password sharing across the board, nothing. So they think that they have cybersecurity software that's on, and a lot of times they do. They have an EDR antivirus. They have nothing to spot if there's an unauthorized software that gets added. They have no idea what software is on the thing. They would have no way to spot whether a threat actor was on a system or not. They have no way to spot whether a threat actor was in an email. I think a lot of people think that the firewalls and the EDR antiviruses and spam filters are going to keep the bad guys out. And what we had to do a fundamental shift was, and what we talk through and coach a lot of people through, is that the threat actors are going to get access to an endpoint or an email. On a long enough time frame, they will likely have that happen within your organization. From then, what happens? How quickly can you detect them and then get them out of the system before something actually bad has happened, before they've actually made it harm your company? That's where we get at that more money gets spent in with cybersecurity, is how fast can you detect that unauthorized access and you can get it to respond and recover that situation before it's bad for you. Some other things that go in that is, like, sometimes that can affect your operations, where you can make it a little bit harder for your employees to do their jobs. That's a risk that you want to say, okay, well, this type of data that they're dealing with means that I need to make it a little bit harder for them to do their jobs, to make it harder for a hacker to do sorts of things. We have things that we do at Forbes that are harder for my employees to do, but because they carry a higher data risk, we do it for that factor, and that was part of the economic equation that went into deciding how we do certain things here, and we help companies through that. So it's not one size fits all for everybody.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this: is doing nothing about your risk actually a business decision? If you do if you're not doing anything about it, is that considered a business decision to do nothing?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good one, but I mean,
right.
But yeah, it's like the Rush song, like, those who choose not to decide have still made a choice, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can choose to not do anything, but that's still your choice. And you can choose to put your head in the sand and ignore that this happened. And it may or may not catch up with you. A lot of times we see it catch up with people, and when it does, it's way more painful than if they would have just said, hey, this is what's out there, and we know that it's out there, and we actually know, and we're informed. I think the only way that you can actually make a real risk-based decision is if you know the facts and you say, okay, this is what's actually out there, this is what the actual dangers are, and I'm choosing to say, yes, I accept this because I know about it, and I can actually choose to accept it because I have all the informed pictures, and I'm making an honest-based decision that's not just based in fear, but it's based in reality of what's actually out there and how to protect against it. Then you can make that choice. If you don't know, then and you're making a choice out of ignorance, I don't really think you've made an accurate choice. You don't have enough information in order to do that.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this: what's the big difference between accepting and ignoring that risk?
I think it's information.
Just the information.
Yeah,
side?
I think it's information. I think if you have enough information, you're less likely to ignore it. But I mean, man, we've all talked to people that it's like banging your head up against a brick wall. When you talk to them, nothing's getting through, and they just still think it's not going to happen to them. And best of luck to those people. They may be right, but I think on a long enough time scale, something's going to catch up to them and those sorts of things. And we can't help everybody. You have to choose to help yourself at some point. But for me, I think once people get the information that they need to do, then they can make an informed decision that's not based on fear, that's based on, okay, well, this is the risky thing that I deal with. Here's the thing that I like to say with people. If you're walking around Cincinnati and you see a hole in the wall, what's the likelihood that you're just going to shove your hand in that hole and just see what's in there?
No, not me.
Like, that risk is way too high just to do. You have no idea what's in there. Like, it could be
needle, syringe,
some spiders, like, who knows, right? You're not going to just shove your hand. Yeah. I see people doing that all the time with their business, is they're just reaching their hand in that hole based on the business because they haven't bothered to put a flashlight in there and see what's actually in there first. And so we do this all the time as we go around. If we have bad vibes about a thing, we don't put ourselves in that situation. Well, just know this: the internet is the bad part of town. The internet is the hole you don't just want to be sticking wild things into. There's a really crass thing that you can talk about, and I'm not going to say it, but you can use your imagination for this. Like, just be careful what you're putting things into.
Yeah, absolutely. And what still shocks me is I always hear this still too. We've never had an incident yet to this point. Yeah, we've never had an incident. I like how you did that yet. That people think that's actual cybersecurity strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if you drive long enough, you're eventually probably going to have a car accident, whether it's your fault or not.
Right.
I mean, it's statistically speaking, driving's a dangerous behavior, and there's a lot of factors that are completely outside of your control. And if you do that long enough, you're eventually going to have something. And that's what we're looking at here is that, when you're a driver and you're worried about things, you're worried about all the people in your relative vicinity. When you're somebody on the internet, you're dealing with 6 or 7 billion people across the internet. A certain high percentage of those are actively trying to steal money from you anonymously at any given moment. And it's a numbers game. And eventually they're going to catch up with you and find some leverage to get you. That's a payday. And until that goes away, until that becomes financially not viable for them to do, and this is all about if you protect yourselves, if all the businesses and people actually protect themselves and make it not financially viable for those types of events to happen, then they won't happen. Right. But until that day comes, then we're in the situation where it eventually catch up with you.
Gotcha. Now, Jon, is there anything else you wanted to add about risk appetite?
I think it's the really big thing of terminology gets in the way of this whole thing, and this is really a thing that's come down from these larger industries, these larger enterprises that really get pushed down to small, medium business. I think about risk-based decisions, but I don't think about it in those terms. I just kind of think, okay, what would be comfortable for my business to struggle? What's going to kind of cause problems for me down the way? What are some things that maybe I would do with the organization when we make decisions here what are we going to have to deal with later on? Try to uncover the things that this could hidden cause us. And you're going to learn. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn more. That acceptance and that tolerance slides. It's on a slider. It's not set in stone. It will slide as you go through your career. Sometimes the calculus makes it so that you will have riskier decisions, but you need to compartmentalize those from other things and not make it so it destroys your entire company. And so, making those decisions with the more data that you get, that's the right data, listening to the right partners, the right people, and then making those from an informed space and being honest with yourself and saying, okay, even though this makes me uncomfortable, even though the hacking makes it uncomfortable for me to think about, and I don't want to ever think about it happening to me, okay, well, what happens if it does, right?
Right.
What can I have done that doesn't make me a helpless victim in this, or a passenger in this situation? What helps me take control and take the reins back so that I actually have control of my organization? And that's really what this is about.
Gotcha. And I'll leave you with this final thought in this scenario so you can help determine your own risk appetite. If I were to spin a wheel and if I land on red, your business had to pay me $500,000, how much would you spend per day for me not to spin that wheel?
Yeah, and that's really the effectiveness of every single email or website attachment that you deal with. All these hacks, most of them have something to do with that, where somebody clicked on the wrong attachment or somebody clicked on the wrong email link or something on the internet that caused an initial access, and then it snowballed from there. Versus if you would have invested properly, then that wouldn't happen.
That's absolutely right. All right, guys, that's all the time we have today. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Uninterrupted, a podcast from Forbes Cybersecurity. We hope you walked away with practical insights to protect your business and stay ahead of the latest cyber threats. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. For more tips, resources, and cybersecurity updates, visit Forbes.com, that's 4bis.com, and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. We'll be back soon with another episode, so stay vigilant and stay uninterrupted.